Man, if you have Derrick Henry, like you're just so lucky.
Welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks. I'm Jason, he's Vaz, and we have, boy, a lot of free agency to go over. There have been just a plethora of signings over the past 2 days, affecting a lot of value changes, both up and down. Vaz, you've got the skinny on everything that's going down. Let's take a look at the quarterbacks first. What are the biggest changes here? I think the first name that we got to look at is probably Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. So Kirk Cousins signs a massive contract, 4 years, 180 million. I think the important takeaway here is it looks to be a 2 or 3 year contract for sure. And if he plays well, it could even be a 4 year contract. So he's there long term. It's going to be tough to improve upon the weapons he had in Minnesota. But as far as landing spots goes, there's not many better than Atlanta. So fantastic for Kirk Cousins owners. I think his value probably remains steady or even increases just on the security that he has with this new deal, right? And then as far as the weapons are concerned, huge, massive wins for Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is once again relevant, probably, hopefully. At least
Hopefully.
we'll know for sure now if he's any good, right?
Yeah.
And then and then Darnell Mooney, who just recently signed there as well. So same thing with Mooney. We'll find out if he's actually good or not because he's finally got a QB that can throw for a massive amount of volume to chuck the ball to him. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
so
think the
big for these guys.
the big name I think here that stood out to me more than anything was Pitts because, he's had so much reported about him in terms of potential. When you saw his college highlights, I mean, he just seemed like everything, but he's really
Yeah,
done nothing. So
yeah.
the fact that this could hopefully either tell us that he is going to be something, or maybe at the end of this, we'll just realize after a few games into the season, maybe he really is just a bust. Is that possible?
Um, it's possible. I think that he's likely to not be an elite tight end, but I think he will be very, very useful. And I think if you've held on to Pitts to this point, you're happy, you're thrilled at what he could be. And I don't think you're going to be looking to sell at this point. You want to see, you want to realize, the draft capital that you put into him. I think it's also huge for Drake London. Drake London has looked really, really good at times. Like he's flashed some like excellent potential. So he has the ability to be like a true number one receiver in fantasy football, right? So yeah, and then also for Bijan and the new coaching staff coming in, I think we're looking at some excellent opportunity for all of these playmakers. And
Yeah,
then
I think
looking at Minnesota, what they've lost now, right? So Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football, but he takes a dip, right? He's still amazing. He's
yeah.
still unbelievable. So he's still going to be a wide receiver one, maybe not the wide receiver one in redraft, but still an elite receiver. TJ Hawkinson, same thing. I think takes a huge hit here. He's still a great tight end. He's going to get the volume. So I'm not so worried about that. I think probably the biggest loser is probably Addison because I think he's third on the pecking order. And I think he'll probably see reduced volume and less touchdown opportunity. He had a lot of touchdowns this past season, right? Many of which were with Kirk Cousins. So yeah, I think he probably takes the biggest hit, but all three take a hit.
Yeah. I think
And Aaron Jones as well, who just signed there.
yeah. I think one of the underrated things will be Bijan because he's a good pass catcher for a running back, although he wasn't necessarily used as much. And then the other factor with him is the fact that Atlanta should be winning more games if you have Kirk
Yeah,
Cousins as your quarterback. So they're going to have more fourth quarter leads and ideally perhaps more volume for him as well. But we'll have to wait and see. Let's talk
absolutely.
about probably the second biggest quarterback signing. I guess we could say re-signing is Baker Mayfield.
Yep. Okay, so I think not a lot to talk about here, right? Nothing's changed with Tampa. They re-signed Mike Evans, they re-signed Baker. So nothing's much changed. Nothing at all has changed. I think you could just, we could talk about the contract. He got a 3 year contract, which is effectively a 2 year contract. I looked at the contract details, and year three is probably not going to happen. I think they would be paying him about 50 million for that season. So I can imagine this is effectively a 2-year contract. Unless he's terrible, then they
Mhm.
could save 10 million by moving on. But I think it's effectively a 2-year contract. So we've got Mike Evans and Baker together for 2 more years, Chris Godwin as well. And then I imagine the Bucks kind of hit the reset button 2 years down the road
Or
and look
ask
for
him to perhaps renegotiate the contract to a more club friendly, less than 50 mil sort of a deal.
yeah. Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I'm not the biggest Baker truther, so I
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if he even is still a starting QB 2 years down the road. But it's possible. He's hung on until now, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Okay, well, speaking of people of who knows what'll be they'll be in 2 years, let's talk about Russell Wilson going to the Pittsburgh Steelers
Yeah,
for the minimum,
yeah,
essentially. But now
yeah.
he's going to a place maybe that he's wanted. He still has to earn the starting job, right?
Well, yes. I would imagine he's the starter. I don't think he would have gone there unless he had assurances that he was the starter. I think because of the way the money was set up and him being basically minimum, like a veteran minimum contract for anybody who took him, I think he had many options, right? And I think he must have had the assurances from the Steelers that he's going to be the starter. I don't think he made a good decision, especially now they've let go of Deontay Johnson. So I don't know how any quarterback in that situation can succeed. They have like one pass catcher in George Pickens, who's doesn't get open with ease,
Yeah.
and they have a pretty crappy O line. So I don't know, man. That's a tough situation for a QB to walk into. So I'm not expecting much from Russell Wilson.
So, okay, then the question becomes because he didn't have a horrible year in Denver in actuality,
No,
his
right.
personal numbers. So, do you
Yeah.
see his numbers going down in Pittsburgh then?
I would expect so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, better coaching staff, a winning organization. So it could work out for him. And you know what? We still have the draft to go. So they could
Yeah,
add in the draft. I expect they
that's
will
true.
probably add some receivers in the draft, some
Receivers,
playmakers.
yeah. Yeah, because I mean, like,
So
when I have Russell Wilson in our league, and when he went to Pittsburgh, I was actually like, oh, okay. I mean, that's at least a good thing. He's not, he's probably going to be a starter. He's got a
yeah,
couple of good receivers there, and then all of a sudden, Johnson's gone. I was like,
yeah,
oh, wait a minute,
yeah.
that changes everything. So then let's talk a little bit about Johnson and Carolina.
Okay, well, I think for me the biggest takeaway there is Bryce Young, and like uh they're giving him a weapon that gets open, right? That runs good routes and gets open quickly, which is what he needs because last year he did not have any time to throw. So he needs that receiver to get open quickly, and that's exactly what they gave him. That's what I was hoping they would give him, is a receiver that can win right away and make
Yeah.
his first read an easy read, right? An easy win. So I think big for Bryce. I think for Deontay, it's a pretty neutral move. He's going from the Steelers to the Panthers. Both have, not great passing offenses. But I'd say neutral to winning for Deontay Johnson, in my opinion. I wouldn't
Nope.
move him up. I would definitely not move him down. I don't think I'd move him up too far either, but it's a slight win, in my opinion.
He might get a lot of more garbage time receptions in the fourth quarter, playing from behind a lot
Yeah,
more than I think he was in
yeah.
Pittsburgh, maybe.
Yeah, and I think they're pretty likely to make sure the passing game runs through him. I'd
Yeah.
imagine so. Yeah.
hmm I think
So
so.
yeah, we'll see. But
Okay.
you know
And
what? The
then
Panthers also improved their interior O line. So if you do hold Bryce Young shares, like there's some reason for optimism now.
one more thing before we move on to our next quarterback. With Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh now, how do you view Pittsburgh as a destination for rookie receivers? Like you mentioned, I think we can probably expect Pittsburgh to draft a wide receiver in maybe one of the first two rounds. Would you
Yeah, I
say
hope
Pittsburgh is
so.
a good destination for that receiver or a bad destination?
I'd say it's a good destination. I'm not going to go as far to say it's great because they don't have an elite quarterback there, but there's a lot of targets available.
Yeah.
Freiermuth was hurt last season, so he'll demand some, but George Pickens doesn't demand a huge target share. So there's a ton of targets that are available. So I think it is a very good landing spot from that perspective. And you know what? Russ is no slouch. He's a decent QB. He's an average QB. So I think it's a pretty good landing spot. Not fantastic, but probably above average.
Sure. Okay, let's take a look at our next quarterback, Gardner Minshew going to Las Vegas.
Right. Okay.
How
Okay.
much? How
Now
many games are we thinking in year one?
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea because you know what? They gave him a pretty big contract. They gave him a 2-year, $25 million contract, which is effectively a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
1 year, 13 million. And so it's enough money that he's the highest paid backup, I think, in the league if he's a backup. And it's enough that they're kind of telling him that they're okay with him being the starter, or they're giving him every opportunity to maybe compete with O'Connell, is it? So if that's the route they go, then maybe he's got a chance to be a starter, right?
I mean, we've got to think of him as a placeholder, thinking that, Vegas is going to draft a quarterback, right?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think they
Yeah.
do draft a
Probably one of
quarterback.
the 4 to 6 guys, not one of the top 3 though, right?
Probably. I don't know how they could get up there,
Yeah.
but I'm also like, it's not. We still have to see what happens with Fields, right? So that's still a potential landing spot for Fields too. So
Even though they have Minshew, you think so?
uh, it's tough to know, but I think it's possible. I
Yeah.
think it is possible, but I'm not sure. We'll see. That is a pretty big contract for Minshew. So,
Yeah.
but it's not enormous in that they couldn't go somewhere else at QB, right? And
Yeah.
and Minshew's not making anybody really excited either, right? So if they want to be a playoff team, I think they do have to get better at quarterback.
Yeah. I mean,
So I think
it
I think
seemed like
it's
a bridge contract to me. Like you're there
right.
for the rookie that we get. Let's say they get Bo Nix or someone like that. Like,
Yeah,
you're gonna mentor the next guy for. It almost seems like Minshew's like that guy, like the
right,
perennial backup bridge quarterback. Is
right,
going to be the path of his career for the next 4 or 5 years.
right. Yeah, we'll see. I think like let's say you need a quarterback. Okay, let's say you need a quarterback. I don't think Minshew is the buy right now. I think unless you get him very cheap, like unless maybe if you're spending a third round pick on him, fine. But I don't think I'd be putting a second round pick into Minshew because there's no guarantees he's the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would not buy right now. If I have Minshew and I want to sell, if I can get a second, I'm taking a second.
Yeah. Speaking of guarantees or no guarantees of being a starting quarterback, what are you making of Sam Darnold in Minnesota? Do you think he's there to be the starter, or what is he doing there?
Okay, so he got another pretty good contract too, 1 year, 10 million. So that's another like high-end backup money. But
Yeah.
that's what it tells me. Like, I don't think the Vikings are going to be excited about Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback. So what I expect is that he is a backup to a rookie. I think that's the most likely scenario.
Do you think they get one of the 4 to 6 guys as well then?
Yeah, or trade up and get one of the top three. I'm not sure. The draft is so hard to predict,
Yeah.
but they're in a better spot to select a quarterback, and I think that's at the top of the priority list. So I
Hmm.
think if I were a betting man, then I would say they're going to address QB in the draft.
Hmm. So do you think like are they thinking go young and rebuild? Like, are they tearing it down and starting over again, or are they retooling? I thought Minnesota was kind of more of a retool type of team rather than let's go to a rookie quarterback. I found that kind of very surprising that they signed Darnold, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, you know what? I don't think they wanted to lose Kirk Cousins. I think it
Yeah,
just
exactly.
happened.
Yeah.
I don't think they're rebuilding. I think they need to show these elite, like they need to sign Justin Jefferson. They need to bring him a QB and make sure he's happy there. They've got great offensive weapons. They just signed Aaron Jones, who's like 30 years old. So I don't think that's their mindset at all. I think they want to win, and I don't think Darnold's going to do that for them either. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. But there's still some pieces to fall where they should. And I don't. If I were a betting man, as I said, I don't think Darnold is the week one quarterback.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. Speaking of guys that are not going to be the week 1 quarterbacks, Tyrod Taylor to the Jets, Trubisky to the Bills, and Mac Jones to Jacksonville. All of these guys are basically signing backup deals. Um, who's the most relevant? Anybody, anything you got to say about these guys?
Okay, well, let's include two more. Okay, Marcus Mariota and
Oh,
Drew
the guys
Lock.
today. That's right.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota went to Washington, Drew Lock to the Giants. So all of these guys signed, or except for Mac Jones, all of these guys signed clear backup contracts to clear backup position places, right? So they're all pretty much the same. They're not worth much in Dynasty unless there's an injury. So if you roster these guys currently, what you can do is you can send out a message to, let's say you have, for example, Mac Jones on your roster. Mac Jones is a bad example. Let's say you have, for example, Mitch Trubisky on your roster. Okay. And you could send a message out to the Josh Allen owner and see if he's interested in acquiring Mitch Trubisky. because oftentimes that the owner who has Josh Allen will want that security blanket, especially if he only has two QBs in a super flex. He'll want the backup so that if somebody gets injured, he doesn't have to spend big on a replacement, right? So if I have Mitch Trubisky, I'm sending a message out like, are you interested at all? If I can get, an early fourth for Mitch Trubisky, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Because if Allen goes down, what am I getting for Mitch Trubisky? A third? So I'll take a fourth now if I can. If I can move Trubisky and get a fourth, for sure, I'll do that now. So yeah, that's what I'm doing with these backups. If I can contact the owner who has the starter, I'm doing that and I'm trading them now if I can. And then same if I have that starting, if I have Josh Allen, I might try to acquire Mitch Trubisky now if I could get him for like, I don't know, almost nothing. Maybe a
Yeah.
fifth.
Saquon Barkley to Philadelphia, one of the more high profile ones. Let's start with this one. There's a bunch of running backs we need to get through. So let's do these guys individually.
Okay, yeah. Let's try to push through this if we can.
Yeah.
So Saquon to Philly. I think there's plenty of reason to be excited about this if you're a Saquon owner, because this is an elite O-line and an elite offense. There's going to be plenty of scoring opportunities, especially in comparison to where he came from, right? I think it's not like an incredible move just because for one reason, and that's it Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts rushes a lot of from inside the 1 yard line, the tush push. Even though they've lost Kelsey, maybe they step that back a bit with Saquon, right? I'm not sure, but Hurts doesn't dump the ball off as much. He does rush a lot of touchdowns, so there is a little bit of reason not to like celebrate too much. But I think if you are a Saquon owner, you should be pretty happy with this move. They've told, especially with the contract as well, they've established that this guy is going to be the bell cow of our team. So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
clearly, as everything you mentioned, I own Saquon in our league, and I was thrilled that he went to
yeah,
Philadelphia. But you're absolutely right. First and goal or from the one, or things like that. He might not be getting those touchdowns, but at the same time, I think when you get the read option with a guy like Hurts, sometimes that
yeah,
opens up more room for
right,
you with the rush, and
yeah,
it gives you opportunities to hit home runs. Which is the same thinking with the next guy I want to talk about, which is Derrick Henry going to Baltimore, because he's playing with Lamar Jackson. Once again, you get the read option, and I think that opens up one more bit of room because you got a spy on the quarterback, and Derrick Henry being able to go through with one less guy to tackle him. I think that's going to be dangerous.
man. If you have Derrick Henry, like you're just so lucky. You've had the best, like one of the best running backs in football for the past 5 years. It looks like his career might be done. He's 30 years old. Should I sell, grab a second? And now he goes to Baltimore, and like this guy's can be a legit league winner for another 2 years, right? Holy cow, what a landing spot. This is a team that's always playing from the lead, from ahead, right? They always want to run the ball downhill, and they've got Lamar's running all over the field, tiring out defenses, and then you got to deal with Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter, scoring touchdowns like left, right, and center. Oh my God, like yeah, Derrick Henry through the roof. So, like from a redraft perspective, I love it. Like I love it. Derrick Henry is going to be I think he's going to be awesome. The guy stays healthy. He can carry the load. They are going to want him to. They're going to want to put him in the Gus Edwards role, but he's much better than Gus Edwards. They've got that Mitchell guy behind him to spell him or to work on third downs, but they don't even throw the ball much to running backs either. So this is the Derrick Henry show, and I can't be more excited to watch it.
Yeah, I have Derrick Henry in every single one of my leagues, and as soon as the news hit, I already got offers for him, and I was like, nope,
Yeah,
he's not going
yeah,
anywhere.
yeah,
In each of those leagues, I'm actually a competing team, so it
yeah,
just didn't make sense for me to move him. If you're trying to win now, he's the type of guy that you want to acquire, not the type of
yeah.
guy that you want to trade. Certainly.
Yeah, take a look at the roster that he's on. If he's on like a middling roster, maybe you want to send out a message or send out an offer for a second and see if you could still grab him.
Absolutely. Let's
Yeah,
move on to Josh Jacobs going to Green Bay.
yeah, huge contract. Uh, Either it's a 4 year, I think 48 million, so massive contract. It's not really that long. It's effectively a 2 maybe 3 year contract. Um, but they don't have any Aaron Jones anymore. They don't have AJ Dillon anymore. There's nobody behind him, literally nobody on the depth chart behind him. So I do expect they will add somebody maybe in the draft or in later free agency, but it's his show. It looks like it's his show. amazing offense, young quarterback. Uh, wow, like amazing landing spot for Josh Jacobs owners. Couldn't be more thrilled with that if you own him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pollard going to your team, Tennessee.
Yeah. Pollard. So, oh, for fantasy football, this really sucks
Yeah.
because when I heard this, I have a share of Tajay Spears, right? And I was thinking like Tajay is a top 10
Uh,
dynasty running back before this happened, and
yeah.
suddenly he's worth less than Zach Charbonnet. So it's why it's a lesson learned for new owners. Don't buy running backs at this stage of the year before NFL free agency, before the NFL draft, because running backs are so volatile in dynasty football, dynasty fantasy football. I thought, Tajay Spears would be the 1A this year. He's a good player, but they brought in Pollard. They gave him a ton of money. Pollard is the 1A. They're both gonna get a lot of work. I expect like a 60-40 split, but for both of them running behind a poor offensive line, it's not good for either of them, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was just going to say, coming from Dallas to Tennessee, you've got to think that Pollard's value is going down, right?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
I don't want any shares of either Pollard or Spears, unless and they've got a young quarterback, bad offensive line, not many offensive weapons, new coach. I don't know. I'm staying away. I don't want any shares of these guys.
Okay. DeAndre Swift to Chicago. Better for him, worse for him, or undecided, depending on what they do with Fields.
Okay, well, I think, well, they're moving on from Fields.
Yeah.
Let's just, yeah, clarify that. But I think it's not bad. Like, it's not bad because he probably wasn't going back to Philly when Philly's great. Okay. Of
Yeah.
course, it's not going to get much better than Philly.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm a Swift owner, I'm pretty happy because he got a big contract. He got 24 million over 3 years. So they've invested a lot of money into him. So they're telling us he's the 1A. And when I see the depth chart behind him, yeah, Roshan and Khalil Herbert. So I don't think I think the Bears are telling us that they don't really have enough faith in Khalil Herbert. Like he's nothing now. Roshan, not nothing, but you know, they gave Swift a ton of money. So I think Herbert and Roshan will compete for backup touches, and I think Swift is getting like 65%, I would say, of the duties. So if I'm a Swift owner, I'm pretty happy with that. Like the offense will be decent with the 101, with Caleb coming to town, and they've got some good offensive weapons. So I think it will be an improved offense, and I'm pretty happy if I'm a Swift owner.
Okay, so my concern as a Swift owner in one of my leagues is that he's going to Chicago where they don't have a very good defense and they're just not going to have the lead in the fourth quarter or the second half very often. So they're not going to need the ground and pound so much. But at the same time, Swift is a pass catcher as well. So maybe if
Mhm.
they're playing from behind in the fourth quarter, is he getting more targets than he is
Yeah.
rushes? Does that kind of stuff worry you at all?
Not so much. Listen, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about the Bears than you are.
Okay.
I saw like a improved defense last year, and I think like by the end of the year they were looking pretty good. Um, but at the same time, as you said, he is a good pass catcher. I think he's better pass catcher than Herbert and Roshan, so he can be used on third down as well. Um, I'm not exactly sure how they will divide the snaps, but the contract tells me that he's the 1A for sure. And he's like, and I think the other two guys are like the 1C. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
he's getting the vast majority of touches.
Mhm.
And I think he's probably getting red zone as well. So I think he's getting all the important touches. I like the landing spot. It doesn't, on paper, doesn't look fantastic, but I think it is an ascending team. And I'm optimistic for if I'm a Swift owner.
Okay. I feel like this guy's sort of in a similar boat situation. Is Eckler going to Washington, going to not the best team, but
Yeah.
we're talking about a guy who can pass and run or catch and run.
Right. Okay, so I think I have less reason to be definitely have less reason to be optimistic about this situation. They don't have a QB in place. They have Brian Robinson, who is not going anywhere. He can handle first and second down duties, and I think he's going to get a lot of work, right? They didn't give Eckler a ton of money either. Only 2 years, 11 million. They didn't invest in Eckler the way that the Bears invested in Swift, right? So Eckler's a great player. Don't get me wrong, and I think he's going to get opportunity, especially because Washington is another team that often does play from behind, and so he will be on the field in passing situations where he excels. So I think like in PPR formats, he's still very, very useful, but I'm not as optimistic as I am about Swift. I think it's like Brian Robinson, Eckler. Probably Eckler's the 1A, but I think Brian Robinson's getting a fair amount of touches. I think they want to, kind of split the workload between those two.
Let's say half PPR,
Yeah.
Eckler, redraft. Are you taking him as a top 10 running back?
No, no, no. I
Yeah.
don't even think I'm taking as a top 20 running back.
Top 20. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
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 Fair enough. Let's talk about Moss going to Cincinnati. No
Oh
more
wow.
Mixon.
So yeah, I think we could probably group a couple of these guys, maybe like Moss and um
Singletary, Edwards, Gibson.
yeah, I don't know. Definitely we can group Moss and Gus Edwards.
Okay.
Okay. Two guys that were potentially dead in dynasty fantasy football get a second chance, right? So like Moss to Cincinnati is fantastic. Like if
I
you
was
wanted,
shocked that,
yeah.
yeah, like it
I,
almost seemed as if they picked him as you're the guy that we want to be our guy, even though you haven't been like a headliner type guy before.
Mhm. Mhm. I think especially with Moss, there's reason to be optimistic. They gave him, I think, 4 million per year. So they've invested enough into him that they're going to use him. Gus is a little bit less. I think it's about 3 million a year. I think both of these guys can be, you have to be careful. They can be replaced in the draft. So you have to be wary of that. These teams are still very capable of drafting a running back high in the second or third round, and then they will lose value. I
Do
I
both
don't
of them
think.
go ahead of Eckler now? I mentioned you said Eckler maybe not even top 20. Are
Uh-huh.
these two guys ahead of Eckler?
I have to wait till the NFL draft is finished to make that decision. But right now, if I know that Moss, let's say if I know that Moss avoids a running back being picked in the draft and he's starting the season as the top of the depth chart in Cincinnati, yeah, I'm taking Moss over Eckler, even though Moss is a shittier player,
Yeah.
for sure. Like Moss by the midway point could be he could be off the team. I don't think he's that great of a player, but if he plays well, he's going to get the red zone opportunities with a great offense. He could hammer in a bunch of touchdowns. And you know what? Joe Mixon didn't look that great either, but he was always playable running back for fantasy because of the situation he was in. I expect similar for Moss if he starts the season out at the top of the depth chart. So yeah, fantastic for Moss owners.
Okay.
You
And
maybe you
speaking,
can move him now for a second round pick if you like.
yeah. Speaking of Mixon, let's talk about him going to
Yep.
Houston as well as Aaron Jones going to Minnesota. You briefly talked about it, but let's talk about these two together.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So Aaron Jones moves from Green Bay to Minnesota. I think it's good. It's great. Like he's going to Minnesota. He's going to be the main feature back there. There is some worry that he doesn't stay healthy and he's aging, but for me, he still looked good last season. I think he still plays with a lot of juice. And I like the position he's in. If they can get a quarterback, they've got a lot of weapons. He can be used efficiently and have some opportunity to score some points. And then Mixon gets life again. This guy that I'm never sure can maintain this value. He just keeps getting life, getting a new opportunity. Goes to a great spot in Houston. He will be the feature back. I think, so
Is he
they
top
don't have
10
to
for
look
you?
at it.
Redraft top 10?
Mixon, no, he's just not good enough.
Hmm.
And Dameon Pierce will still steal a little bit of work, but he's ahead of Eckler for me.
Yeah.
He's ahead of Eckler for me. Yeah, yeah, much better offense.
Okay.
I would say he's probably like the 12 to 13 range if I had to just guess right now. Yeah.
Cool.
I
Okay,
think
let's quickly talk about
less likely to
let's
happen.
yeah. Okay, let's talk
Yeah,
about wide receivers. Darnell Mooney going to Atlanta. We talked about him briefly, as well as
yeah.
Deontay Johnson going to Carolina. We both talked about these guys a little bit. Anything more you wanted to add from what you said earlier?
Not so much. Let's move on to the next.
Okay, let's go to Judy in Cleveland and Gabe Davis in Jacksonville.
Okay, so yeah, Judy goes to Cleveland. I think this is really interesting for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
He's going to have more and more opportunity to spread the ball around. I think it's for like Amari, it's fine. Amari's still the 1A there. He's still going to get his targets. I think it sucks for Eli Moore. I think Eli Moore is almost dead now. So yeah, I think for Judy, it's part of the course. Uh, Not much movement there, but and we'll get to see him on another team with another quarterback, see if he improves a little bit. So I think I like it for Judy, but for Eli, I'm concerned for Elijah Moore owners.
Yeah, I wonder if with Judy, if just a change of scenery, like you mentioned, if that might help him and give him a bit of a kick in the butt. Because it
Right.
seems like, there's been reports of attitude issues in Denver, and you kind of wonder maybe if the change of scenery will kind of put something in his ass to get him in gear.
You're
But
right.
we'll
Yeah.
see. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
guys briefly that did not move. Pittman stays, Bourne stays, Evans stays, and Higgins stays with their respective teams.
Yeah.
Anything to
Okay.
note the fact that they're staying?
Okay. Let me just mention first before we get on to that is Gabe Davis goes to
Oh,
Jacksonville.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I just want to mention quickly that like I for the other players, the other playmakers in Jacksonville, and for Trevor Lawrence himself, I think it's fantastic. Fantastic because you get like a wide receiver too that doesn't command a lot of targets. So like if you're a Christian Kirk owner, fantastic. He's still going to get all of his targets. And if you want to target Kirk, you could. Some people might think this is bad for him, and I don't think so. I would target Kirk now. I don't know if they're going to add Ridley still, if they're going to try to keep Ridley, but if they don't, and if they don't add one in the draft, I think it's great for Kirk. Gabe Davis, it's also great for the running back, right? Gabe Davis is a great blocker. He runs deep routes, doesn't command a lot of targets, but when he does catch, he usually goes for a TD or goes for a long gain. So it's good for Lawrence too. It opens up the field for everyone. So I like it a lot for the other players. As far as the players that didn't move teams, I think there's not a whole lot to talk about. We covered Mike
Evans.
Evans briefly, yeah,
Yeah.
and Pittman gets a huge contract, so he'll be the number one there for Richardson. And Bourne, he's just a guy that fills out your roster, but maybe can be flexible on a bye week or something. I think he's the same as he was before.
Yeah.
You're just happy to have him there as like an extra piece in case you need him.
Yeah. Higgins, ideally, you're happy that he stays with Cincinnati, getting past
Yeah.
Burrow, right? Seattle's tight end Noah Fant stays put, but Parkinson and Disley are gone to other teams. What do you see with those three changes?
Okay, so yeah, no, I love it for Noah Fant. A lot of targets have left the building, and he's finally going to have an opportunity to showcase his skills, and he's going to get a bunch of targets. So he was a high draft pick. We still have yet to see if he can live up to that billing, but I think he's going to have the opportunity now. So if you play in a tight end premium league, you should be excited about your Noah Fant shares. I think Parkinson's going to the Rams. They have Higbee there, right? Higbee's injured, so Parkinson should have some opportunity early on to showcase his skills a bit. But I'm not overly excited because Higbee will come back and they'll be running a two-headed monster there. And then Disley goes to the Chargers. There's reason to be optimistic there. I think the Chargers have they have a lot of targets available, especially if Mike Williams or Keenan Allen leave. But they're in a prime position to draft somebody, a pass catcher as well in the NFL draft. So we'll have to see. I think that out of the three, I'm most excited about Noah Fant.
All right. Smith going to Miami, Ertz in Washington, Schultz stays with Houston, as does Henry in New England. Who grabs your attention the most out of those four?
I would say for sure Schultz. So Schultz gets to stay in Houston, gets a big contract to play with a QB who we've seen can throw for volume and throw for touchdowns and doesn't have a lot of weapons. He's got a couple young weapons, but this is a veteran that he can rely on. So huge for Schultz owners. He's probably a number one, a back end or a mid tier tight end one now in Dynasty or in fantasy redraft. So maybe a back end tight end one in Dynasty.
All right. It has been a crazy couple of days in NFL free agency. We're going to continue to cover some of the moves. So we'll do another video in a few days to, cover some of the other moves that have taken place after this first wave. So definitely subscribe to the channel to make sure that you're up to date when we post up new videos. Like the video and also share this with your friends. Tell everybody about this. Subscribe to the channel as we're going to keep pumping out these videos to help you win your fantasy football leagues. Vaz, once again, thank you for your great analysis, and we look forward to doing some more videos in the future. Make sure you join us on Fantasy Football Freaks.